Ascension in the Raw. We are so excited to be here with you today. We got quite a rich topic of discussion with regards to relationships and essentially anybody outside of our own inner realm that's going to be in our sphere. It's going to be in our field, whether it's people we live with or partners or strangers out on the street. We thought, hey, you know what? Let's talk about the dynamics, the energetic dynamics of what it's like when we're with others versus with ourselves, right? So I'm so excited to be joined by Annette Shaner of the Art of Intuition. And thank you so much, Annette. And before we jump in, I always want to do my best to remember, because we're flying with so much energy, to give us a moment of presence. So for anyone here live or anyone on the replay, to just take a breath and anchor in, come into your body, come into your heart, and just open your energy, open your fields, and enjoy the ride, right? Because ascension is the hardest thing we will ever do. And it's good to play and have some fun too, and come into our bodies. So I would love, Annette was mentioning freedom and imposition and all these amazing aspects of relationship dynamics. So I would love, Annette, for you to take the floor and start us off with this topic.
Okay. Yeah. It was my thing, and we were late. That was on me. So I apologize for that. Okay. So I was listening to something the other day, and one of the topics that came up was being able to express yourself and express how you feel free without it imposing on somebody else. And it was an interesting topic. I've explored it a little bit before, because technically when Marissa was talking about, technically we're in a relationship with our mailman. Technically everyone in your sphere, you're in a relationship. Everybody you meet is technically a relationship. It might not be one that's impacting you every moment of the day. And usually our sexual relationships can feel a lot more, they get to us a little bit more. So we have what we probably rank them, even though when you look at them back, looking at them through your soul lens, in a sense, through your soul, you don't really see the difference. You might have had a bigger contract with one over the other, but your soul is not going to really parcel them out so much as our human does. Our human attaches different things to them. It's going to attach, like, that person made me happy, or that person made me sad, or that person screwed me over, or that person wasn't nice to me, or I wasn't nice to that person. We kind of assign a story around the person. And then we have emotions around the story around the person, and that's what gives that kind of character. Then they become like a bigger player in our story. Someone who was a side character a couple years ago becomes a main character now, and they kind of come in. And as we go through ascension, we start to feel a freedom inside that we don't normally feel in our human consciousness. We don't feel that freedom. We don't feel like, oh, I can express myself how I want to. And I'm going to give an example, and this is just to kind of get you thinking about it, and then we can go into a little more depth. But I remember being out to dinner years ago, and there was a woman next to, this is a very fancy, expensive restaurant, right? And there's a lady next to us, and she had a very small newborn. I don't think that baby was like a week old. She decides to breastfeed right in the middle of, in the middle of the table. There is, you turn around and there it was, and I remember I was with a couple other ladies at the table, and one that had just had a child was like, oh, that's so amazing. We should be able to do that wherever. And I'm like, well, if I whip my boobs out at this table right now with no baby attached to it, it's not going to feel so amazing. Everyone's going to think that's kind of strange, but there is a part where it was nice that she felt comfortable enough to do that. But there's also a part where in our human consciousness, we don't think about how we're affecting other people. We don't think about, oh, wait a second, maybe this isn't the most appropriate thing to do right now. Maybe I should go do this in the restroom, and maybe I shouldn't be doing it in the middle of the restaurant where there's going to be a lot of conflicting views on it, how that feels. That's just one example to just kind of get you in the mindset of it, whereas you can understand part of it, and you can still, did she even think about anyone else? but when we're in those situations, kind of, we don't either. And there is a thing with our relationships where the freer we start to feel, we can start to impose a little bit. And even if it's not with what we want to do, it can be with just ascension or awakening in general, and bringing other people into it and getting people to kind of come into it, and wanting people to come with us. And we can start not really seeing other people and not really caring what other people feel. And we, as a human, we don't care anyway, even though we kind of feel like we care. We don't care what others feel. We just don't have the capacity to. We can't even figure out what we feel. We don't have the capacity to give a shit about anybody else in our human consciousness. But there is a flip, I think, in ascension, where we don't we're so happy to do what we want to do finally, and feel that empowerment in that, we can kind of lose the focus on other people. So I'm going to kick it back to you, Marissa, and let you roll with that for a bit.
That's so relevant because just recently I went through an experience where, just like you were saying, this could be, we could be having these experiences, these phases where we are the most free and happy and uninhibited. And, especially for those of us that are really shut down, and maybe we didn't have a super happy childhood, or first life before. And so you're high on light. You're high in these beautiful dimensional places inside of you, and you're celebrating that, and you're kind of all encompassed in it. And then it's like, oh my gosh, I've been basking in this so deeply inside of myself that now we have to bring in the next piece, which is that mastery of the awareness of the others around us. And so I just recently got in trouble, if you want to say, because I was so elevated inside of myself and so expanded that I actually kind of became out of touch, if you want to say, with the energetic guidelines of a space. So then I was accidentally, unconsciously disrespectful. And it was kind of mortifying, but then not, because it's like, well, gosh, this is part of mastery, is that we're learning to hold these higher realms and to really be ensconced in our own reality, in our own world. And then now there's that intersection, of us and the others when we're a part of whatever it is, a family or a community or an organization. And it was quite startling and jarring for me to realize that, because I was like, oh my gosh, it's like a whole new level of mastery to be able to hold so much inside, but then also still stay there, but be able to kind of put out the probe, the God probe, and like read the room, or make sure that this appropriate? Like, let me double check, let me circle back. And so that's what's interesting, is it's like we're kind of ungrounded in a way, which is what we want. But then to have that awareness of, wait, let me make sure, let me check that this is all okay, it's very interesting. So when you were talking about assessing and reading the room, like what's the most appropriate, that I wanted to share on that. So thank you for that. That's also a very real life example. um, so yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about, is like holding high frequencies in your world, inside your process, and then holding awareness for others too. And this is new. Like, this is really a next level kind of thing. And not in every instance, but I feel like there's always going to be more examples of this that we're stretching into. And I want to share some real life examples from my own journey for folks out there. Some of the things that we catch ourselves doing in unconscious trauma patterning. And we could even see ourselves return to it, but it's different because we don't feel the same way inside. So it's not really the same thing, but it's still the same action or behavior, but it has a different root. So for instance, like a trauma pattern of oversharing, because you want to connect with others. So you're coming from a place of feeling lonely and wanting to connect with other people. And so you're like an open book and you want to share a lot, right? But it could be too much for people, and like, so all these little examples, but it's relevant even in the ascension, like even when we've crossed over and we're in these new spaces. And I wanted to share a great way to look at this. I took a note here on, when we study child development, there's this concept called parallel play. And so very young children are completely ensconced in their own reality, in their own imagination and play. And they're literally standing next to each other at the PlayStation, but they're not playing together. They're playing next to each other. And that's a great example of like, you're in your sovereign reality in your own little world, but you're still in proximity with other people, And so we have to find that. It's so interesting to find that. It's like, well, you stay in your bubble, but we need to be aware of those in their bubbles around. And see, I thought, okay, so parallel play, different dimensional realities, but we're right next to each other. We might even be in the same car, or in the same line at the grocery store or pumping gas or whatever. Um, so I wanted to share that. And then another thing I wanted to throw in before I pass it back to you is being aware of the space weather. Oh my gosh, the solar flares, the cosmic weather, the Schumann resonance, and the spikes in the Schumann resonance. These affect all of us at different spaces and places inside, whether it's a physical detox reaction or a migraine or an emotional wound coming out or like a memory, and then you have this really strong emotional reaction, so a lot of clearing of the root. And so it's important to take these pieces into consideration as well, because you could be like, what the hell's going on with me, or what the hell's going on with them, and then you check the charts and you're like, okay. And it can be so helpful, because there's so many pieces to hold and to be aware of. And it's new and it's so expanded. So I'll give it over to you.
No, I think that I love when you said, read the room. And it's like we have to energetically learn to read the room. And that is not that easy to do because I feel like we're more respectful, really. I used to think in our human consciousness, sometimes I would think we're more respectful to strangers than we are to people we know. You're more respectful to people. And then I would, then sometimes I look back on that and go, no, I don't know. I don't know if, like the example I gave earlier with that lady of asked first before she publicly was going to breastfeed in the middle of, she was around with a lot of people she knew, would she have asked first? And then, but I think we can get so caught up in our own process and our own bubble. We don't, it's almost like we're trying to take down, um, we're trying to take down a collective or take down something from within. You know what I mean? When we're kind of really in our power, we want to and speak up and do what we want to do. We don't want anyone to tell us what to do. We're in that, almost the rebellious teenager phase. We want to do what we want to do. And we don't really care how it affects other people. But because we don't even understand we don't even understand how it affects us in that point. So there's a lot of parts that especially in the beginning parts, I think, of Ascension, the first few years or even in it, because it takes years to go through a lot of these processes where you don't really master yourself enough to even understand how you're impacting other people. You don't understand the contracts that you have in place with these other people. You don't understand that you're supposed to do certain things, but maybe eventually it starts to overstep because you don't want it to change. You start to cling on to stuff. You don't want it to, you don't want to let it go, so you just want to keep it here. And, you don't want things to shift. And we don't really, it was the great iconic line in Dirty Dancing when he was telling her about the dance space. This is my space and that's your space. I don't come into your space. You don't come into my space, and that's how it works. I also did a class years ago and they used hula hoops where you would stand in a hula hoop and see where are you stepping out of your hula hoop to now step into someone else's hula hoop and give them an opinion or give them, and we've talked about opinions before. You could say the most epic shit ever, but if someone didn't ask for it, it doesn't matter. It's going to go right on. You can sit there and go, that was the best advice I've ever given anybody. I'm going to write that down because I'm going to pat myself on the back because that was just so poignant. And they didn't even hear it. It didn't went by them. It didn't matter because they weren't in a place to hear it. But we go through a lot of that, I think, in the beginning where we overstep all the time when we start getting our psychic gifts, when our clairaudience, clairvoyance, all this stuff starts coming through. We want to share it with people. And when we do that, we really start to overstep quite a bit because we're not really really keeping anyone else, and we don't care how it affects them. We just want to tell them about everything and tell them what we see, or I had a dream about you, and this is this and this. We really don't understand that our process is, we only can see one layer, one facet one part of it because we're in it. We can't see how the whole thing fits together. Like these people were here. We have this contract together. We're supposed to be able to do these things together. All those things come in later, and all those things you'll be able to kind of pick apart later. And you'll be able to understand that this was their role. This is what they were supposed to do. This is what I was supposed to do. It's like you're reading from a cue card in a sense that I was supposed to say this. I was supposed to step in here and I was supposed to say my line. Then I'm going to step out for a while. And you might have done the exact same thing, but you weren't doing it consciously. You couldn't see all of that. You were just doing it because you wanted to do it. You didn't do it because you could see, okay, that my contract is to share this, but not this, or that was just meant for me to know. I don't need to share that with anybody. Because when you start to really be able to read your field, you can see a lot of things coming for people, and you can see how a lot of things are going to intersect. But what do you share? What do you not share? When do you learn not to? I used to do so much more of that years and years ago, and now I do none of that. I don't care what I know, what I see. I do not share any of that stuff with anyone. Because to me, it's just reading my field. We all get the same information. That person knows. They might not be listening. We kind of start to have this thing where no one else has a higher aspects but us. And even though technically we are the higher aspect or that higher version of a lot of people in their reality, that doesn't give us ownership over their universe or it doesn't give us the right to step in. It doesn't give us that right because they have their higher aspects where they're going to choose to listen or choose not to listen. I chose to listen sometimes, and a lot of times I chose not to listen. And I got down a lot of weird places because I didn't listen, or I took the scenic route and I had a lot of hard ways down, because I didn't listen. I didn't want to hear it. Because we do want to have that special feeling because we never have that. So we want to impress people with what we can do, and we want people to want to hear about it. But when people don't want to hear about it, that kind of can take us back too. But it doesn't give us the ownership on stepping into someone's dance space, stepping into someone's hula hoop to then tell them, this is how I feel about that. This is what you should do. Anything that starts off, this is what you should do. Almost let's take those words out. Don't ever start anything with this is what you should do. Because, it's funny. I was someone the other day and I said, well, and I said it, you should. And then the person, I didn't ask you. And I'm like, well, that's fair. You didn't. I was like, you're right. You didn't ask me. I just went on about what I was doing. Because I'm like, you're 100% right. You didn't ask me. So why did I even say it? So I'm going to leave that there and I'm going to let you take over from there, Marissa.
Oh, you touched on so many great pieces. I really appreciate the visual of the hula hoop as well. That's really great. Visuals, I feel like visuals really stick for me in my consciousness. So I'm sure that will help our friends out in the audience as well. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And there's so much that you said, respecting the sovereignty of everyone around. And you're reminding me of these horror stories of going to like the few spiritual festivals that I ever did. So just to share with everyone, like most of my journey has been very cloistered, internal, working with, teams inside of my universe, not a whole lot of outer engagement out in the world because I was a young mom. And so it's like, the times when most people are going out partying and they're going to all the festivals and all, all the conscious festivals, all these things. I only did two of those, in my life because I had a little girl, I had a baby, and I wasn't really interested in all of that. It just wasn't feasible either. But the few times that I went, I was stunned because but then you can understand why. So people are so blown open. They're excited, but they're also very ungrounded within their body, right? So they're really in the higher chakras, which is awesome. It's great to have your heart open, your throat open, your crown, but they're so elevated maybe from a lot of exposure with the music and the yoga and maybe some psychedelic substances, maybe not. Kirtan is very powerful. Just the singing can be like taking a substance. But they would go around and give these like prophetic, just completely unsolicited like things to people, and tell them things about them. And I would even have experiences with others on the ascension path where they would want to tell me, oh yeah, you were here and you're doing this. And I'm like, no, I wasn't. Like, don't tell me what I'm doing. Like, you don't have the authority. So it's so important, and I'll definitely get fired up about that. Very, very important not to tell someone. And like you said, don't be a should head, right? That's so good. I love that you said that. I had to learn that too. And in the human design system, I'm a projector. So I had to learn also about sharing what I see. And it's not people either, they're not ready for it if it's unsolicited, right? And you also have to be so aware when you can see that you don't give someone some kind of information that could be shattering to them, like way too much for their psychology to handle, and that's Lynx medicine. If anyone out there in the audience wants to look up Lynx medicine, where you can just unzip and see, well, it doesn't mean that you say it, and that can be challenging as well. And another piece that you reminded me of as you were speaking was, this is a big one that I see a lot, and I do my best to only share what I'm told to share. And then if people make assumptions, then I can't control that, right? But with the unlocking of my sight and the gifts and all these things, which all of us have this, by the way, none of us are in a hierarchy system. We all have amazing oracular sight, all of us. It's just a matter of flexing the muscles, opening it up and all. And I had to learn to only put out what I was told by my universe to put out. And some of it would scare the shit out of me. I didn't want to, but it was like, it's not about you, tough, get over it, whatever, right? But what we see a lot is people writing energy reports, but it's their own process, it's their own journey. So they're trying to say that their physical experience, their psychological experience, the catastrophic dystopian shit that they're seeing is real and it's going to happen. And it kind of drives me batty because I'm like, no, dude, like that's your 4D. Like you need to clear your 4D. That's not the whole world. That's your galactic core. Like you need to do that. And so, yeah, I put out a thing about dystopian, like clearing dystopian timelines and practicing discernment with what we're reading and the content and the source. Always check your source, and your source is you. You're the source. And so it's great to have this inspiring information, and it's great that so many people are opening up as well and sharing. But the discernment piece is so big with regards to honoring our sovereignty and practicing discernment, like, oh, is this appropriate for others, or is this just my own shit that I have to do, kind of thing. And um so let's see, the other thing I wanted to share that you touched on was the concept of people. I don't know if that's exactly how you phrased it, but this is a really big one, is that we have to be so in touch and connected with the shifts inside that we realize that perhaps, family members, they don't know the shifts inside and they're not on the same journey. So they may still, in their concept of us, have us locked. And then this brings up the holograms again from last week as a concept based on our behavior, even maybe as a teenager, that we haven't even been for a very long time, or they're locked in on, well, you said this 5 years ago. And it's like, okay, so it's so important for all of us to allow the space for another, the other, any other, to be in a process of evolution also, right? Especially for us that are on this journey, is like, well, that person may have been an asshole, last year, but they were probably going through something, like giving them the grace, giving them the space. And then that's us also not coming from a place of judgment about another person. And the words that I wrote down were, it's important for us not to get locked in and not to allow ourselves to be locked in. And if someone else has us locked in their mind, it's really none of our business. So, right, because we don't have anything to prove. We just have to understand human ego consciousness nature, which is that human ego likes the story and the reason to hold a grudge or a belief because it's comfortable and it's easier to keep the heart closed and have that belief about someone, then open the heart and do the work. And like you were talking about the contracts with everybody, like we're not even aware of the contracts, the soul contracts we have. And so for anyone out there who has maybe siblings, you're disconnected from your siblings because they're fixated in their mind on who you are, based on your childhood together. or based on unconscious reactionary behavior in your teenage years, you know? And this is like a long time ago, or maybe even last year, which is a long time ago, or maybe even 6 months, which is a long time ago, too, technically, if we look at things in the quantum energetic, you know? But it's comfortable for humans to keep their heart closed. So they would rather have this, you know, concept. And I think that's really important. Like, you can see that tribalism in people with everything, like every concept, right? Everything that they subscribe to as part of their belief system where they're fixated. And so I wanted to share that it's so important to give others that grace, that their evolution will happen in their own time, and not holding them, like not holding a label on them inside, you know, like just seeing them as the energy, just seeing them as the soul, not the behavior. Like, and of course this is it depends on the circumstance, it depends on what happened, but I hope that this makes sense of like keeping an open perspective and an open container for the potential of the human evolution of every soul, you know. Yeah, and I'll pass it to you.
So the last thing you said, I think I'll pick up from there when I don't even know if it matters what, and it doesn't matter what anybody did. It doesn't matter if we thought it was so egregious, our human thought it was the worst thing that could happen. Um, or it's still the story we put around it. We make it sound egregious, but everything that happens, we'd agreed to it ahead of time. Now, that does not mean we have to keep a lot of people around us that just because we agreed to stuff ahead of time doesn't mean we got to be locked into that stuff forever. I can remember hearing people just talk about being in relationships and, oh, they won't let me go and all this really Disneyfied, or I don't know if it's Disneyfied, this romantic, what they would think is these romantic journeys, the Twilight twisted kind of stuff. And it's like, you can leave if you want to leave. You just don't want to go. I mean, it's just because the drama, when we're trying to sit down and talk to someone, ascension has its own things you can talk forever about. But when you're in your human consciousness, what you connect with other people on is the drama. That funny story. Let me tell you what happened there. And let me tell you about this person here, or that's just how we connect with people. So when you stop having those identifications with things and you stop having those connections with people, then you can kind of feel like you don't have a lot of relationships anymore. And you can start to feel like we don't have the, when I was talking before about you wanting to overshare in a sense, because we don't have an accountability for ourselves yet. We are just like children running around. We have no accountability, more like divine children in a sense, because we are tapping in to all the things we can see and do, but we have no accountability. We just run around like little kids running around. But there is a sense with relationships, and as you go through your journey, whether you're a partner now or not partner now, to me, every relationship I had prior to my awakening, gone. Just that was gone. Some existed for a while, but they're gone. Some even that when I started to come into ascension, most of those are gone. I do things easier sometimes. Now, blood family is one thing that'll probably be different for a lot of people. Or if you started with a husband or wife, or a partner in that sense, you might feel it's a different part of the journey or a different way to go. But a lot of times these relationships kind of peter out, but we don't want to hear that. Some of the most popular videos I do is about getting relationships to work, or why people come back in our lives, and all those kind of things, because it's not what we think. We want to think it's just bigger. It's all about just us clearing. That's it. That's the only reason we have them. That's the only reason we have them for a long time. Now, it eventually, I feel like it does shift into something else where you're with people to create things, and bring higher consciousness to the table more, and to create more things from your heart, and get into the peace and joy of that, and to create. But to do that, you have to be with someone that's done so much of the journey, internal journey, to even be able to get there. If not, you're just still in the middle of the muck, and they're just activating our stuff, and they're activating us more and more and more and more. So It's like we just don't have the accountability for ourselves in the beginning. I can remember to people talking, and anyone who's ever had someone just completely just ghost them and never talk to them again. And I can remember talking to people who had done that, and they're like, "Well, I just figured that they'd eventually get the point because they don't want to have the conversations." And I'm like, "Well, they'll eventually get the point, yeah, when And it's kind of a little similar with ascension. We don't know sometimes how to button these relationships up. We don't know how to go, we'll do tons of things, and we can talk all day long about closing something else in its highest place and closing out a timeline in its highest place. But in the beginning, we don't even know what that means. We might not have the energy, meaning also the time, the money to close out something in its highest, so we will kind of Irish goodbye and kind of ghost away sometimes because we don't know what else to do. Now energetically, we're putting a pin in it, and our universe will say, we'll go through it again because you didn't know how to do it. So maybe in a year from now, we'll do we'll reboot the same cast and bring everybody back, and you'll have another shot at it. Or we're going to completely, get all new people, and we'll just play it again with new people, and you'll have another shot at it. But we kind of start to understand that. So even if it's the same act of just kind of sneaking away in a sense, or just leaving without really telling people you're leaving, it's more the energetics behind the act, and it's not too much the act. A lot of times we do it in our human consciousness because kind of the same reason, in a sense. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We don't want to, but it's not so much we don't want to hurt their feelings. We don't want to feel bad when their feelings are hurt. That's the realistic reason why we don't want to tell someone how we really feel about something. We don't want to feel bad when they feel bad, because it's going to unearth all of our sadness. We're going to feel bad about that if they feel bad. Whereas in ascension, we start walking away from a lot of things, and a lot of people. You're going to go through a lot of people because we don't really understand in that moment what to do, because we've created all this stuff and none of it's aligned anymore. So what do we do? Let me close it out. Let me try to align it. I don't even know what that means. There are going to be times in the beginning of this, we don't know what that means. That doesn't mean a happy ending. That doesn't mean a Disney ending to align it to its highest. It means it's the highest for everyone's soul. Well, there are parts of ascension, you don't know that. You don't know what's highest for your soul, and you sure as shit don't know what's highest for somebody else's in certain stages of ascension. And I do think it does flip where you can see what is highest for them. And then you have to decide what's appropriate for you to do. But I'm going to kick it back to you to kind of run with those for a bit.
Wow, that's wonderful. And you reminded me of something I wanted to bring into this, which was using the zodiac of Libra, the balancing of the scales, because I know you've got some Libra, I've got some Libra, and it's a great example for relational dynamics when we look at the unconscious human dynamics, right? Which we're codependent or self-sacrificing or the people pleasing, right? And then with what you were just discussing right now, another piece that's big is if we're on the ascension path and we have a partner and they're no longer on that path. So then the dynamic is actually shifted where we're the leader in the relationship. And then we have to have the guts to leave it or evolve it. And again, we may not know what the evolving means at that moment, but you start to come into awareness that that person doesn't maybe know, or they're not showing any indication that they're aware of what's best for them. It's almost like just keep going, right? Like just stay in it, even if it's not working, even if we have different interests, even if one person is interested in things that the other person is evolving out of. So it doesn't really seem like there's a reason to stay together. And then that brings in really complicated topics as well, is like, well, if you're financially invested, and you're dependent, like there's all these pieces, or it gets a little complicated, and that's individual, of course. But the initiation of becoming the leader essentially in the partnership, and then having to be the one, not meaning that you're dominating or telling the person what to do. What I mean is you have more awareness to see where it's going and to see, is it appropriate to carry on? Or, am I even perhaps in my choices, in my lifestyle, the shifts happening within me, if this person isn't on the same page yet, maybe they have more to experience that I feel complete with. So maybe we need to have a conscious uncoupling and they will continue, right? And to go through whatever that is, whether maybe they still have more to clear with sexual relations or whatever. There's so many different ways that you could play with that. But thank you for reminding me because I wanted to touch on because Libras are the perfect example of the human relationships where it's codependent. I do this, you do this. It's not really symbiotic. There's always this element of the other, the outside is more important than me, and even I got stuck in that again, a deeper layer of it. I was like, oh God, I did it again. I made everything outside more important than me, meaning the love of myself, meaning the self acceptance and the inner work. Right. And so the thing that's important to share with everyone is as we tunnel into deeper layers of the root chakra, you're going to maybe experience, at least I did, amnesia, and then you have to revisit some things again because you're going into deeper layers of the subconscious where it's very challenging to hold on to stuff we have. Yes, we have learned this. We definitely have learned this, but it's like not present with you while you're going deep into this clearing of this stuff. So there are so many pieces to hold through this process. And just want to support everyone by just sharing. Remember to have compassion for yourself and for others and to take into consideration where everyone is. Um, Along that, I wanted to bring in, like for me personally, I live in a multi-generational household. Not everyone in the household is on the ascension path, right? And so then there's that expanding your bandwidth to honor and respect the belief systems, the programming of, and it's not like we're indulging people's programming, but we also have to understand, like, if someone is of a certain age and they're not on this journey, they may be fixed in their beliefs, and that may be where they are, and that may not change for them. It may not be on their soul's trajectory to evolve certain things, and it may. And that's part of that respect also of when you talked about freedoms and being an imposition. It's like I don't really want to use the word compromise, but it is in a way, but not in a way that's detrimental to us because again, we're in the household, we can see the energy, we can see the dynamics of what's going on. And if we're asking, how do I serve? How do I support? There may be ways that come that the old version of us would say, oh, that's 3D. I can't do that. But it's not actually. It's a higher consciousness aspect of service, in order to support and contribute to the household for as long as you're in this situation. And I'm being kind of broad with my examples to just let people decipher what that would mean for them, individually. But in certain instances, it is aligned to do certain things in order to contribute or have exchanges, or it's more of the symbiotic relationship. So someone has the house, maybe, right? Someone's has their ability to be very laborious and do physical labor, like especially if we have different ages, in the home or different phases of health and things like that. And so then it's like a team, a community kind of more element coming in where everyone has a different piece of the puzzle to bring it together, and then have it be a beautiful, ideally smooth running machine until it can't anymore, until it's time for the next piece. But thank you because yeah, I wanted to touch on that, like different paths, different generations, different hardwiring, and honoring the awareness and the consciousness of others and their soul's journey, but also honoring our own. And that's where I'll bring in that Libra balancing of the scales again, like the other and their journey isn't more important than ours. And I want to bring in with that, a revamping of these words. So bringing these words into higher consciousness in the ascension, self-centeredness, sacred selfishness, the hierarchy of right relationship. When we don't really use the word hierarchy anymore, but what do we mean by that? Well, the most important thing is our connection to stay connected, right, with our higher self and our light and our awareness. And so that comes first. So when I say sacred selfishness or self centeredness, I want to expand beyond where in the human world, we're denigrated for caring too much about ourselves. Self care is not a thing, right? Like putting yourself first is considered to be a bad thing. Like, see how everything's flipped, right? In the 3D. And so we flip it, we reverse it into the higher realms where your alignment is how you show up for everyone else. essentially. Like you have to fill your own cup first, or like put your own oxygen mask on. That's a good, mainstream example of self-centeredness, meaning I want to share this visual that you are the center of the universe and you are the vortex. You are the spiraling galaxy of cosmic intelligence and divine love. And so you've got to be in that space to hold that, and you got to do what it takes to hold that. And then everything else will easily flow, spiraling those arms, the radial spiraling out, right? And so, yeah, I wanted to share that too, because that's really important when we talk about relationship dynamics, whether you live with people, whether you're partnered, or like me, I'm a parent. And then another piece is with the sacred self care, or you could say sacred selfishness, is when you feel your happiness and you feel your sacred fuck yes, and you feel that fullness, then you're ready to go out into the world, right? Then you're not going to really be triggered if someone is acting crazy on the freeway with road rage or cuts you off in line at somewhere, or like today I needed to ask for the key code, the keypad code to use the bathroom, and I'm hard of hearing in one ear so that I can hear more inside, right? I'm hard of hearing, not really, but in the left ear I have like a reduced ability to hear. And I asked the woman for the code, a worker at the store, grocery store, and she like wouldn't even stop, and I have to kind of read lips sometimes, to see what someone's saying. And she couldn't even take the time. And a part of me, it was my ego, so I didn't do it. But a part of me wanted to be like, "Hey, bitch, I'm hard of hearing. Thanks so much. I'm so sorry for like bothering you." Like because it was so rude. But I was like, "Well, I'm not wearing a sign that says I'm hard of hearing." Like, that she doesn't know. She works there. She's stressed out. So I go from me into seeing where she is. So that's part of the relational energetic dynamics as well. But if I hadn't done my self-care in the morning, if I hadn't maybe done my somatic practices for regulating my nervous system, my mouth may have popped off, because that's something I'm working on is my mouth. The human in me still has a lot of fire coming out of the mouth. So anyways, I just wanted to share some of these like real life examples of having more space for grace with others because of honoring that self-centeredness. And when I say that again, I mean the center of the vortex, the eye of the storm deep within the center. And it takes work to hold that.
Wow, that was a good example of being able to see outside of ourselves, and not taking it personal. Taking it all very, very, very personal. That was a slight to me, because in our human consciousness, everything is a slight to us. It doesn't matter what it is. We take it all super, super personal. And, it's like it's not. It's not you, it's me, and all the stuff we would say because we don't really know what else to say. But we take it all super, super personal. Um, I think it's important to go back to one thing you were saying is I would say everyone is on an ascension journey, but they're not on the same timeline we're on. They're not on the same time frame where you're on. Technically, even in our human consciousness, we're ascending. We're just taking up such small amounts. Yes, you see shifts and changes as you go through maybe decades of your life, but you don't see a lot of big shifts or changes. You still are on the same wheel of repeating a lot of the same stuff because we're taking a very slow route. Technically, at the end of someone's life, through typical body death, and they're ascending. They're going to go. Their spirit's going to go and ascend in a different body. They're leaving the body. They're returning to unification. They're returning to source, however you want to put that. And some people are going to ascend through death, and they're going to then take that soul and then go into another body and ascend that body. And they're not going to ascend in their current body, because when I would say that, like everyone's going to ascend, I'd always have people say, "Well, my parents aren't, or this person's not," and I'm like, "Well, they might not in this body, but." Typical death is an ascension process. There's a reason why when you look at people aging, typical human aging, a lot of stuff that happens with our ascension, conscious ascension, is memory loss, and all of a sudden heart palpitations and all this kind of stuff that starts happening. The body starts shutting down. All those are just normal things. People say, "Oh, that happens for the end of their life," or you get that moment at the end right before people would pass, where you'd go see them and they look wonderful. Their their complexion's great, and they're because they've embodied in so much of their soul in a sense. ready to go. They're kind of getting ready to pull away. So they kind of have that, that ninth inning, that rebound in a way. They look all great and the next day they go. And you're like, wow, they look so great right before. So it's it's a similar type of process you'll see. It's just a kind of a different way to get to it in a sense. So whether you feel like people are going to ascend consciously in this body, which that's Marissa and I, that's what we are doing. That's what was in our journey and our path to do, or whether you see people going, through death and they're going to leave the body and go ascend through a different body in a different place and time. It's still all part of ascension, but they might not be on the same time frame we're on. And when we stay with people who were on a completely different time frame, or they're still in their human consciousness, they haven't even gone through their awakening. And I know people who will tell me they're so far into their ascension process, yet they're with people that are still very much in a human consciousness. I don't know how those things really work when you're in a partnership in the way they're describing a partnership. Now, can you live with people in different consciousness? Yes. And you're going to be called to do that. I think everyone's we're called to do that, to see, can you hold your consciousness? Can you not go unconscious? That's why we get put with people that are not conscious, to see if you can hold it and to show people how to be the higher aspect, be their conscious self, be the higher aspect of themselves. We're here to show people that. And just because people might not understand that, and the people you're with probably don't understand that, they're going to be completely in a different place with that. They might never understand what you're doing. They might never understand why you're doing it. It might not be something they understand. But we still know we're supposed to be there. We might be in a reality where we're taking care of the whole house because that's what we feel like we're supposed to do. And that's where we are. And there are a lot of parts of ascension we don't like that stuff. That's not the sexy part we signed up for, when you're taking care of other people. And that's just not when you thought about it, when your vision of your ascended life, I will guarantee you probably what most of us are doing now was not in that vision. That's not what we started saying. You know what? Now I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be out shoveling a driveway. And then the next day I'm going to shovel that driveway again. That's just not what we thought it would be. But there is so much humbling and learning to live with people. And also understanding because our soul doesn't care about a marriage certificate. Our soul does not care about any of these things that our human gets really kind of hung up with. It doesn't care about the human beliefs and the human rules in a sense. It doesn't care about those things. So as you find yourself in relationships, or no matter what stage you're in, or no matter what stage they're in, they're on their own timeline. That doesn't mean you have to sit with them, because if you stay with them, when they go through certain parts of their process, you're going to go through it with them. So their karma, you're going to ride their karma out. If you've cleared that within yourself and they haven't, then you're going to be still clearing it while they're clearing it. You're kind of getting all back in it again. Now, some people know that's what I'm supposed to do. But if you're not sure, and you're just hanging on because there's this belief, I have to stay because I'm married to this person, or I have to stay because it's my parent, or I have to stay because of all these things. Connect as much as you can with yourself. And you might not be able to really know the answer right now. You might not be able to know the answer till you look back a year later to see, am I supposed to stay? Is my contract to be here to support this person? Or am I just afraid to leave? Because I don't want the judgment of others if I walk out and if I don't stay, because I want to go do a different part of my journey that's opening up. It can be kind of tricky sometimes to know when are we supposed to kind of cut bait and go? When are we supposed to stay? Do we stick or do we twist? And what is the right thing for me to do now? And I don't even like the right or wrong thing, but what is the conscious thing for me to do right now? And if you don't know, might it be the right time to make a decision? There will be some times where you're not going to be there for their whole process, but you might also understand that right now we can have a community like Marissa was describing. Everyone can do something even though some people are not conscious in the household. Some people are. Maybe you're the only one that is, but you can kind of see that you are learning to live in a community. You are learning to bring your skills of what you can do and not just look at what somebody you want to do. What does someone need you to do? Do you even care what someone needs you to do? If you know you can do one thing, but you just don't want to do that, but you know you're capable of doing it, why don't you want to do that thing? Do you even care that that's what they need? It's kind of like the old bartering system. It's like, I'll give you this if you give me that, but I don't need that, what you want to give me. But that's what you want to give me. But I don't really need that. But why do you want to give me that? Do we even care what somebody needs? Do we even care? It doesn't matter what consciousness that they're in, it's what consciousness you're in. Do you even care? Can you even see the other person or what they need out of a relationship? What they need? I see so many people complain, and I used to do the same. Complain about, oh, I don't want to do this, I got to do this. But look at all the stuff I'm getting, but I don't want to do that one thing. I can remember being at a job, and it was one of these jobs I would work so much on myself because I had zero to do with this job. And I remember I would get annoyed if I get one email a week and I have to stop what I was doing in my personal day to do one thing. And I would just get like, I cannot believe this. I was going to go for my walk. I was going to go have tea with someone. And now I got to sit here and work. And it was just it was ridiculous. But that's how I got to feel about it, because I wasn't thinking about anybody. I wasn't thinking about all the things that job afforded me to do. I was thinking about, well, now I feel inconvenienced. I don't want to do this thing. So there is that line. It kind of goes back to the beginning of being really accountable for ourselves and what can I bring forward and what do I not want to bring forward because I just don't want to do that thing, even though I know that thing will really help them out. So I'll let you go from there.
Thank you. That all was so, so good. And I just want to shout out, we have a fellow Olympian in the chat. So I'm so happy that you're here with us, Steve. Thank you so much. I'm an Olympia too. So shout out to our, what did he say? He said something really great here. Yeah, Guerrilla Mystics. The Guerrilla Mystics. We're out in the fleet. We're hitting the street, right? I love that. So thank you, Steve. Thank you for everyone who's here and for everyone also on the replay. And, I loved everything you shared. Again, I know I say that every time, but I appreciate, because you're right. Everyone's on the ascension journey. You're right. Just because it's not their focus doesn't mean they're like, they're not like consumed with it. It's still happening. So thank you for that. That's so important to remember. And the selfless service. I love your share about feeling inconvenienced. And for me personally, how I was able to overcome that and expand into the ability to feel so full inside to then be of service, without any definition or any care as to what the act was through the self-care. And so that goes back again to that center, being so much in your center and giving yourself the love and the time and whatever it is that helps you to feel full. Then you're overflowing. So I always say, put your oxygen mask on first and fill your cup, and you will find that in that satiety, like you're not thirsty, and you have extra water for everyone in the village, kind of thing. And I loved when you were talking about the different tasks, and I was hearing, yeah, like chop wood, carry water, right? And it's sometimes hard for us to remember, and I'll say this a lot on the podcast, because we're living in this modern, like, reality, and our bedrooms and all this modern amenities. And so it doesn't look like we're living at the mystery school, like in the temple, but we are, and we're scattered across the earth doing this job and this great work. But every moment, everything is an opportunity, with others as well, to be of service. And it could even be a smile, to someone out on the street, or saying hello or how are you. Or the other night I was at another store, and this woman said, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm fine." And I just went back to looking at things on the shelf. And then I heard, "Ask her how she's doing." I was like, okay. And so I said, "How are you?" And then she proceeded to share, like, she had just been diagnosed with diabetes. And so I was like, oh, okay. So that's why I came here at this exact time, was to speak with this woman and just to assist her to expand, her perception of this experience. And we talked about nutrition. She had everything aligned that that she needed to do, which is great. It was really more about her mindset, so I kept coming back to the mindset and diagnosis, and she was so thankful, and it was really cool. And her heart was totally open. She was really in it. And then her coworker came, and it was really interesting to watch the dynamics, because her coworker came, and now the void is filled. So she was like, "Well, thanks so much." And then she was kind of dismissive of me. And it was so funny to watch. And I don't care. I'm just watching. I don't, you know. And so again, by feeling fulfilled in my own self and in my own connection with my connection and how good I feel, it's like you're there, you pour water and then you scoot. And you don't care. You know, you're unattached to the outcome, the result, if the person even has appreciation, if they're even capable of that. Like you really don't care. It's just about being that presence and doing it. And it's a chop wood, carry water. And maybe it's the cat poop in the litter box, or here's a great real life example. Like my daughter has such a packed schedule with school and sports, and she's doing all these amazing things that I didn't want to do in school. I was like such a stranger in a strange land in school, and she's a social butterfly and having a beautiful experience. She really signed up for the full, pure human experience in a very lovely way. And so I support her in that, you know. I'm like, this is great. She's so different from me. She doesn't have this bullshit and the trauma. She's enjoying, and she has a pretty maxed out schedule. And so for a while, years ago, I would get annoyed because she wouldn't do her certain chore. And then I realized, she's not trying to, you know, be an inconvenience or make me do more things. She actually does need help. She doesn't have the bandwidth, you know. So then, of course, I would ask her to do some time management to contribute to the household, but I would also help her, you know. And so it's certain things like that, like you can sense. So when you're full and you're in your fullness, your spidey senses open up and you're accessing the higher information and you're able to hear like what would be really lovely to support the others around you, whether you live with people or just out and about. And it's so helpful to ask, how can I serve? But if you feel like it's too much or you don't want to, for me anyway, I can only speak for myself. It's because I'm running really, I'm spread thin. So the self care piece, you know, and tending to like what would make you feel really nice. Well, maybe a hot bath would be a really great thing for you, you know. So I find that the self care really supports us to be our fullness and really be like just have an overflow of energy to then contribute into our service and into the relationships all around, you know, to be that beautiful presence like Buddha, you know, around other people and just be smiling and having a good time and make people laugh. It's like you have to have a bandwidth for that. And so if you're noticing that it's low, self care, fill your cup, take good care of yourself. And also, this ascension is the hardest thing that we will ever do. So make sure you pull back sometimes and just have fun and laugh. You know, just allow yourself to laugh and just like chill. That's very important as well. I want to see if I had any other notes. No, I think that I shared everything that I had written down. So I'll pass it back over to you, and we'll see how we do.
Oh, I think I love your example of as soon as someone else came, she was like, all right, see you later. Because we do get kind of put in situation, and I kind of started this saying, you know, technically we're in a relationship with the mailman. You know, you might not want to think about it like that, but your soul thinks about it like that. And if you can't be respectable, it's easier sometimes to give someone you don't know more leeway. You know, we just don't, because we don't have all the emotional baggage with people we really don't know, right? Our human would say we don't know. You know, we just don't care. You know, I don't care. You know, well, you didn't care if that lady in the store walked away. It didn't matter. I don't know her. What do I don't care. I mean, you know, we it was fine. We had a beautiful interaction. It was over, and the moment was gone. But if your mother had done that, you this is just an example, not you specifically, Marissa, but you know what I'm saying. But if my mother had done that to me, I'd be like, well, we're having a conversation. You know, because we attach so much to it. You know, because we attach so much to someone we know. We expect more from them. We expect more from them because they mean more to us. But that does not. But that's kind of a very human way for us. Our human consciousness wants to look at it that way. You know, we expect more from people because they mean more to us, but that doesn't mean they're going to give us more. Because if someone is still in a human consciousness, they don't have the bandwidth to give us more. They don't have the capacity to give us more. And it's just like Marissa was saying, they don't even love themselves enough to love anyone else, technically. And neither did we when we were in that place. So that takes a lot of being in your doing the self-care and making sure you do take care of yourself and what that means and being by yourself. And there's so much having to be by yourself. And a lot of people don't understand that. There'll be times when you're out in public where you might feel super expanded when you're at home, when you go out and you feel like you are very shut down and you because there's so many different fields, so many different consciousnesses, and it does affect your consciousness. I do feel like we do get past that at some point, but I can remember going out because I know that I was supposed to meet someone, or even if I didn't know who it was, I just knew I had to be somewhere at a certain time and someone was going to show up, and I was going to talk to them about something. So I went like that for years, just kind of knowing and going, waiting, and then I'm like, gosh, I wish they'd come because I'm tired. So I was like, universe, let's get the show going. I'm ready to go. And then a few minutes later, someone would come sit next to me, and I'll be okay. Here we go. Let's go. Let's get it going. I want to go home. I'm tired. What do you need? What's the issue? Let's go. Um, but there also comes a point where you can feel when the moment is gone. And I talked about this on a stream with some other people the other day, like knowing the moment where you can go and people call it, planting a seed. I know a lot of people will just like talking about something conscious and just kind of leaving it there and seeing what people think about that, or maybe calling someone out on being disrespectful because they don't even see that it's disrespectful. They don't even see that part of it. And even if they might not take it as, well, you were right, it'll stick with them and they'll think about that later going, yeah, maybe that wasn't the nicest thing for me to do. But knowing the moment's gone, knowing it shifted. And as soon as that other person came back, the energy shifted. She went back to a different aspect. She wasn't as open anymore. The people who aren't open don't want to be around someone in a higher consciousness. I've had people jump out of a window basically to avoid me. When I used to be, I don't go out as much anymore, but when I used to be out quite a bit. I would literally have people trying to avoid me. They could not avoid me quick enough. It was comical to watch people try to avoid me. I know when I was going through a real strong galactic phase, I was very direct with people. And I'd have someone text me and then they would just beat around the bush. I'm like, just what do you want? Get to what you want. Stop with all the stuff. Just what do you want? And I had this one person so scared, he didn't know what to do. He's like, well, I was going to ask you to a happy hour, but then it was too late. And then I didn't know what to do. And then I didn't know what to say. And then I thought it was rude. And we can really impact other people just by whatever aspect you're in. So when we're coming into a galactic aspect, you will see your effect you have on someone else where people don't know what to do. When you start, especially when you're in the very galactic, no nonsense cutting cords, and the galactic races are great aspects to embody if you are having a hard time cutting cords with people, you are having a hard time with moving on, because when you're in a galactic phase, you just don't care. And you don't have the humanity. That's why people go the soul route and then they go the galactic route, or they go one or the other. I can remember talking to a guy in a bar years ago, and we were just talking about this type of stuff. And he said, I don't care about people. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I just don't, they're like pets to me. I have no attachment to people. I just do not care. And he said, and sometimes I feel bad about that. He's, I don't even care if a friend would die. He's like, I'll just find another one. I just don't care. I have no connection with people. I said, no, you're just galactic. You're just heavy into your galactic phase. And you're not into any of that soul, the deep soul stuff. But he was one of the most polarizing people I had seen like that. But you could understand it in a sense. And that's basically your galactic phase. You start to cut cords with people. You start to cut cords with all the stuff that is just window dressing. Like I would just say, get to the point. What do you want? Just tell me what you want, and we'll go from there. We don't need to beat around the bush. We don't need to talk about stuff nobody cares about for an hour. Just get to what you want, and we'll go from there. So when you are having a hard time with all the attachment we get to people, the attachment we get to relationships, the attachment we get to the story about the relationship can be long gone, and we can still be in the story of it. Because it doesn't matter how long we were in it. If we had a really strong twin flame soul connection, even though technically we're all twin flames, technically we're all soulmates, but the romantic ones they hit us a little bit on a different level. It's a different experience for a lot of us when we're in those. They get to us more in a sense. If we were ranking our relationships, even though, like I said, our soul's not going to do that, but our human would put this person maybe on a little bit of pedestal. And we'll let some people get by with a little more shit than somebody else. I know anytime I go through a twin relationship, they'd always get by with a little bit more. I'd always kind of let them, they would just slide by with a little bit more. And it was just that kind of thing, where are we letting people get by? Who do you give a pass to where you tolerate a little bit more from because you have a different energetic connection with? And these are the things we have to start to unpack and go, why do I put up with that from them? And it might not even be a grievous thing, but it's not a conscious thing. It's not a respectful thing, but because you see them as a love or a sexual partner or whatever it is, or twin flame, if you're even still categorizing in that way, we do give them a pass. We're a little softer. Maybe I was a little softer with that person. Maybe I wasn't as direct with this other person. Because we can get them back into closure. Our human cares about closure. Our soul doesn't care about closure. To them, when it's over, it's over. I remember reading this book, and it was a Penny Pierce book. She did a lot of books on intuition. And it was a part in her book, and she said her mom got divorced at like 85. She's like, now? Why are you going to do it now? You're 85. And I think what she wrote after that was like, when the soul is done, it's done. When the frequency is not, and we can say it in a different way, when the contract's done, it's done. When the vibration shifts, it shifts. So when the frequency cannot hold you two together anymore, it's over. It doesn't matter if someone's 96 or 6. It doesn't matter. When it's done, it's done. And, a lot of times our human cannot understand that. But when you see that go on with people, that when it's over, it's over. And we try to kind of hang on to it. We try to, continue to redo it, and we don't want it to be done. We want to keep these things going because we feel like we can kind of get back to it. You don't care about closure with someone you don't really care about. You just don't. We can sit there and say, oh, we want closure. We want closure because it didn't end the way we wanted it to. We didn't get the physical ending we wanted. But no one's ever going to say anything that's going to make that feel better. That is closure in a nutshell. You're never going to get it. It doesn't exist. It's our issue with, we didn't like the way it ended. We can take everything that happens to us and boil it down into someone did not do what we wanted them to do. Period. Every issue you have right now boils down to that. I'll guarantee you that. Even if we don't do what we want ourselves to do, it still goes back to that. Everything going on in your life has to do with someone's not doing what I want them to do. Period. And that might include me. I'm not doing what I want me to do. So as we continue to, kind of unpack relationships, I wanted to kind of throw that stuff in, that I've done a lot of videos on closure, and just to know that it's resolving it within yourself. No one's ever going to say anything that's going to make that better, because we just don't like how it ended. We don't like the fact it ended, and no one's going to make that better. We have to resolve the fact that something has ended within ourselves and stop looking for that one. If that one thing would have happened, it would have been so much better. If they had said that one thing, I just would have completely gotten over it. It's bullshit. It's not true. It doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter, because the whole thing has shifted now. The whole frequency of the relationship shifted. It didn't end the way you wanted it to. It didn't go the way you wanted it to. So all of a sudden, we just kind of want to go back there and redo it and revisit it and make it go a different way. And we're not going to get that. So some of the biggest regrets I'll have people having, sometimes when I go through regrets and clearing regrets, is, well, I wish I had gone differently. I wish I had some kind of physical ending. Our soul doesn't look for a physical ending. It's the frequencies. It's done. There's no more purpose in it. It's over. It's not a physical thing. Our human wants the physical thing. Oh, we got married. Oh, we got engaged. Oh, I got this job. Oh, I finished this project. Relationships end way before you get to that physical thing happening, because we don't care about it. The soul doesn't care about the physical ending, that one thing where our humans are looking and go, okay, now that's over. Okay, now it's a concrete over. Our soul doesn't see it like that. Our soul doesn't look for that one physical thing. So a lot of times things end and you'll still be waiting for that one thing. Like, oh, if they just say that one thing, if they just do that one thing, that thing doesn't matter. It's over. Energetically, it's over. And what you'll start to figure out, the more you become in tune with your energy and ascension, is once you hit that thing, it's over, energetically, you'll feel that. And you'll feel that the energy start to go out of a reality, the foundation go out of that reality years before it actually ends. You'll start to feel it. And you can look back on realities years ago and say, I can see that was coming to an end. I could see that was closing out years before it closed out, but I didn't have the consciousness to see it. I can look back at it now and see, look at all those signs I was getting that was going to end. Look at all those dreams I had, or look at just the reality started to shift. People started to change within the reality, but I didn't want it to be over. So I didn't see the signs. All the stuff you see in Ascension and you feel was happening in a sense in your human existence, but you didn't see it. You didn't have the consciousness to see energetically why everything was happening the way it does. And once you gain that consciousness to be able to see why things are working out the way they are, how you started the whole thing, why you participated in the whole thing. And when you start to be able to put all that together, you can see how long some of these realities, I'll know realities closing out years before it closes out. I'll start to get bored. I'll start to just see the chinks in it. I'll start to see how it doesn't support long term. Like it can't really hold like this because there's so many other things that need to happen, and this won't support any of those things. Or the relationship, you can see it's disrespectful in a sense. You can just see that there's a power in dynamic, not that's not aligned there. You know, so I'm gonna kick it back to you because I know we're getting to our time. So I'll let you kind of run with some of those.
That was all so good. So good. And just looking at the dynamics of, well, what makes the difference is the history involved. What's that? Energy, the perceived investment of energy. So these are like the underlying chords of attachment, you know? So I really appreciated when you brought in the galactic component because that is very visceral, very swift way of just, just slice the chords away. And something else that when you were sharing, I was like, it's so interesting because we do the same thing internally with our own stories, right? And with the programming up to an extent as we're clearing and as we are shifting. And so when we talk about relationships, I would love to close this on our relationship with ourself, our relationship with our soul and our energy and our universe and our mission. Like, there's so many pieces, right? Our relationship to our body, so many pieces. So we live in a relational reality, energy, everything all around. The consciousness that we're perceiving from. And so as you were sharing, I was like, oh, it's really neat because I can see applying everything you're sharing here with a relationship outside with that inside as we are shifting so many realities, right? And dropping density inside and looking at like everything that you asked with the other person. We could apply that to like, why am I still carrying this around, right? Or this, or so on, when energetically you can feel that it's not the best thing to hang on to. And so everything you shared, I'm like, this is so perfect for the astrology right now as well. And so just to put that in for people, because we're in Pisces season, and this is one of the most loaded Pisces seasons that we have had in like 15 years. The North Node is in Pisces, the Sun, Mercury, Neptune. There's so much in Pisces energy, which is all about the dissolve and unity consciousness, mysticism, our divinity inside, but it's also surrendering everything that is not that. It's also looking at self-sacrifice and martyrdom and addictive compulsive behavior. It's transpersonal psychology, so it's very relevant to everything we're discussing today. And then when you were talking about assessing the energetic dynamic of a relationship and kind of carrying something around, even though it's beyond its expiration date, I thought, well, that's very timely because Mars and Venus are going to swap. So Mars has been retrograde and Mars is going direct on Sunday. And then early March, not long from now, Venus is going to go retrograde. And so it's very interesting to watch now how those aspects within us, sacred feminine, sacred masculine, and the unconscious aspects that we will continue to work through the programming, how they're kind of crisscrossing in the sky and also through us and in our interpersonal relationships. the unification inside of those forces so that then we are non-dual, right? And we're back in our like observer consciousness. But it's a trip to apply all of this in a multidimensional way for our internal world and our internal shifting and with others and the cosmos and all of it. So yeah, I think we have a lot to chew on for everyone here. And it's also important to share that if you are in a space of assessing, for lack of better phrasing, the validity with a timestamp of a relationship, make sure that you really feel with your full body. And it's not purely an emotional decision. It's not purely a financial decision. Like when you make major decisions, feel the energy because your body will not lie. Excuse me. You will feel the energy, you will receive, make sure it's a multidimensional process for a multidimensional process. But these things may come up for everyone because Mars is action, motivation, physical stamina, physical energy, also sexual libido. And Venus is our values and beauty and money and relationships and friendships. And what are we valuing, right? So there's a lot that's upgrading it yet again, right? While we're releasing a lot and dissolving a lot too. So yeah, I just thank you so much, Annette, for such an amazing conversation. And for everyone here live and on the replay, we look forward to hearing what you receive from this. And any questions, you're always welcome to leave them in the comments too, like under the recordings. And yeah, I'll just say thank you and peace out, everybody. And Annette, if you want to say anything, and we'll be back soon.
Oh, I think you covered just kind of really bowed it all up on, how everything is kind of a lot of winding down, I think, of a lot of relationships. I think a lot of stuff we have carried the last few years will start to really look at those and not, and I think you hit on it. You don't make the decision while you're emotional, and you can't close out a reality with anything, with a person, with a job, with any type of relationship when you're emotional. You're not dealing with yourself first, and you kind of have to get through the emotions of it and then look at it. And that might take weeks. It could take months. It could take a long time. It might not be right away. It might be. It depends maybe on the decision. And you might find your universe giving you little test realities to kind of make that decision. Like, I remember talking to a lady and she said, everyone's been really, not nice to me. And I've had to stand up for myself. Like at my yoga studio, she was saying I had to tell this lady something I don't remember what it was, but something about the yoga studio. And then, but it's like, well, if you can't stand up to someone being disrespectful to you that you really don't know at a yoga studio, God help you with your mother later on. You're not going to be able to do it. So your universe is going to give you a lot of these like places to play and speak up for yourself, or you know shine your light more. It depends on what phase you're in. If you're in a speak up for yourself because you never did, you're going to find all of a sudden your universe is giving you a lot of opportunities to do that in what we'd maybe call very low level situations. In a sense, they're not people you really know. They're not people that you care what they think, in a sense. Because if you can't do it with these people, or in this situation, or a situation where you have no money involved, or you're not looking at a job where that's how you're paying your bills, this is something else. If you can't do it in those situations, when you bring in the relationships and dynamics with blood family, or partners, there's a whole different dynamic there. So if you find your universe is giving you these kind of places that you find like you keep going through the same thing, you keep having to stand up for myself, or I'm keep having opportunities to share stuff, or what, it doesn't matter really what it is, but you'll see a pattern going on because your universe is getting you ready for it's kind of like those are the opening acts at a concert. And when you get to the main act, you got to be ready. But if you can't even do it here, you really need to do some more internal work to be able to do it here first. And then I can move on to standing up for myself with my boss, or maybe it is time to leave that job. But when you're really emotional about it, it blocks what you can't really see what's aligned, because all the emotions cloud it and you can't see. It might be a line to stay. It might be a line to go. It might not even matter what choice you make. It's just knowing how to navigate yourself. That might be the lesson you're learning there. It might not even be to make a choice. It might just be to listen to yourself and go, okay, what should I do here? Maybe I do nothing. that's a choice too. But you don't know when you're too upset about it. If you have a story around it, or I'll never be able to make any more money because this is the only job I'm ever going to get, or whatever, or this is the only person will ever love me. All the crap we tell ourselves. Um, but when you have all that stuff around it, you can't see. You have no sight. And you wouldn't get in a car and drive if you couldn't see. I think we said this last week. No good choices come at 2 a.m. If you can't see which way to go, don't go either way. Have patience with yourself. Marissa mentioned a lot of self-care. Feel what you feel drawn to do. And it might not even be something someone else would see as self-care. Maybe you feel like just going to a movie and getting some popcorn or getting a drink. It does, like I said,
Totally.
alcohol changes for a lot of us along the way, but whatever you feel like doing. Alcohol will help you clear emotion. That is one thing I've used. If I couldn't get to something, alcohol will help you clear emotion. So get clear, then look at it. And you might find it's not as big as you thought it was. The other person might still be involved, emotional about it. But make sure you're in the place to really see what direction feels highest line and be ready for that to pivot, because that might shift and it might not be highest line the next day. But at least you'll be able to see it. So I know it's time for us to go, so I'll let you close out and I will say goodbye.
Thank you, Annette. That was so good. Wonderful way to make sure that we're really expanded with everything and not rushing. And when you were speaking, the words are give yourself the spaciousness and the space for grace, which is you. You are grace in your space, in your spaciousness, which you could say time, you could say physical space, but I also see it as like a cushion, so you don't feel rushed. You don't feel like spread thin. You don't feel unsure or doubtful. You feel solid as a rock, and there's this calm surety, whether it's something has to be shifted or it's just you even strengthening your own internal process of assessing truth. No action may even be necessary. It may just be you with you, but spaciousness is a luxury that is vital for us all to allow and to embrace, right? And whether that is meaning it's time to do something or do a process or pull away and have room for yourself, space for yourself, but it's a cushion between the now and then the whatever, the decision, or whatever, that spaciousness to cultivate. And I think that's so lovely. So thank you so much, Annette, for another great week. And I wish you all an amazing week out there. And we'll see you soon. We'll see you next week. All right. Aloha.